Welcome to Clinical Lab Chat, part of the MedCore Podcast Network. I'm Chris Wolski, Director of Business Intelligence for CLP. Today I'll be speaking with Rosy Lee, Vice President and General Manager of the Life Sciences Mass Spectrometry Business Unit at the Thermo Fisher Scientific, about proteomics, genomics, and how both are leading the way to the anticipated precision medicine revolution we've all been talking so much about over the last couple of years. Now, as VP and General Manager of the Life Sciences Mass Spectrometry Business Unit, Rosy leads a global organization that's developing innovative mass spectrometry instruments to support customers in analytical sciences and scientific research to accelerate precision medicine, omics research, biopharma drug discovery, and more. So I think we have a really great guide to omics of all types. So Rosy, welcome to Clinical Lab Chat. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about your work and how they're going to how it's going to benefit labs and patients in general.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, I can't wait. So let's dive right in here. Rosy, welcome to Clinical Lab Chat. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your work and how it's going to benefit labs and patients in general. Now, before we really get into what you and your team have been doing, I do want to frame our conversation a bit. Now, there's been a lot of talk about precision medicine these days. We talked about that in our little pre-interview. But what is it exactly, and why should I, as a regular person, and our laboratory listeners be excited about it?
First of all, Chris, thank you for the invitation. It's really great to be here. So precision medicine or personalized medicine is another term for it. It's kind of like what it sounds. The idea is a therapy or a treatment that is tailored just to you. And the idea is all of us are individuals and individual at a genetic level. And so therefore your treatment to be really effective has to be specific enough to address your specific genetics. And so there are a lot of examples for drugs that have been developed and tested in large populations that may not always work in specific populations, whether it's gender or ethnic or racial based. And so therefore having something that's tailored to you personally is an important way to think about treating disease moving forward. So that's precision medicine and personalized medicine at a high level.
And that also, in terms of, we don't talk a lot about treatment in CLP, but on the treatment side, having this more precise diagnostics, it allows you to have very precise approaches. So you're not just, the old days, you just hit everybody with everything and hope something stuck, as opposed to now you can be, it also helps to protect the patient from being injured as well. So we always hear about like injuries, or like in the old days with chemotherapy and such, you just horribly poison people hoping that something would work, right?
Exactly. And I mean, just think about cancer, right? Cancer is one word, it's one disease, but there's so much diversity, variation, even within a specific organ. And then even within various individuals, how their cancer evolves is going to be different. And so therefore, it kind of makes sense that the treatment should be different for each individual. So that's precision medicine at a high level.
Okay, great. So now in your work, the way I understand it, you're marrying proteomics to genomics. Now, why is it important that you're doing this? And how is that going to help lead us to this personalized approach to medicine that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, so the reason why it's actually important to understand genomics and proteomics is it really comes down to understanding the individual nature of who you are, which is the genetics, but then possibly also understanding the impact of things that are around you, your environment, and that could be expressed through your proteomics or through other aspects of how your body manifests itself. And so marrying those two things become really important. And when I think about, just as an example, there was when you think about Alzheimer's. It's associated in many ways with a protein called tau protein. It's a phosphorylated tau protein.
Right.
And so you would think that just looking at the proteomics is going to help you treat or identify somebody who has a susceptibility to that disease. It turns out, though, that if you understand the genetics of that person, that individual as well, that you can actually start to predict Alzheimer's and dementia patients within 4 years with 90% accuracy. So, in other
Wow.
words, understanding both proteomics and genomics is going to help you predict and therefore treat much earlier than you would otherwise. So, bringing two things together is really important.
Right, and in that case, even though there isn't a cure yet, there's been some work on this. There isn't a cure yet. Catching it earlier, you can take steps to at least slow the progression, and maybe a person would live a natural lifespan before they're significantly affected.
Exactly, exactly. And you're just better prepared and your family's better
Right.
prepared. Right,
Right,
exactly.
right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what. So that's what your team is doing generally. This has been translated into, again, my understanding, a new a mass spectrometry instrument that's available from Thermo Fisher, whom you work for. So where does this fit into the our omics discussion and precision medicine? How does that all bring this picture all together?
Yeah, so in June of this year, 2023, we announced the availability of a new instrument. It's called Thermo Scientific Orbitrap Astral. And it is a mass spectrometer that has unprecedented speed and unprecedented sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And what that speed really means is throughput, the number of samples that you can do. And this is a step change in the number of samples that you can do. The sensitivity is a step change in terms of what you can actually see in a particular biological sample. And this is important because you want to be able to, in order to really understand the nature, the more specific nature of a disease, you need to be able to run a lot of samples so that you can find, the particular variant or change that might be the cause of a disease. And you need the statistics. So you
Right.
need to be able to run thousands and thousands of samples. And this has been difficult to do, more challenging to do in proteomics, in mass spectrometry prior to this instrument being launched. So, prior to this instrument, I'd say customers, were really excited if they could do a few hundred samples. Now with this instrument, they're starting to rethink what is actually possible in terms of a study. They're starting to talk about 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 samples. And once you have that, with the sensitivity of this instrument, when you start to look at a population that is healthy and compare that with a population that has the disease, you finally have the statistics where you can identify what's really important or what's different about the population that has the disease that you're
Mm.
studying. So
Okay,
that's the reason why it's so powerful.
so it has a public health aspect to this then.
I
I mean,
think
in a way, I
eventually,
mean, you could have an application for that anyway.
yeah, exactly. But eventually, yeah, because you can imagine large studies collecting patient samples and then actually processing these and really understanding what's going on. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so certainly throughput's really important. We talk a lot about that at CLP, and for our laboratory audience. What are some of the other ways that this could change the instrument and then this approach change the way labs are working in general? I mean, we're going to see some new tests coming out of this, or workflow, additional aspects of their workflow changing. What's going to happen there?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's I was just with a customer the other day, a company that actually is using this technology to run a study of several thousand patients, cancer patients, and from that, they expect to be able to identify biomarkers, which are essentially indicators, protein-based indicators that are prognostic of the particular cancer that they're studying, and they plan to actually turn that into a diagnostic assay, which then plan to offer through their CLIA lab that is actually here in California.
Great.
So that's just an example, right? Being able to complete these studies faster means that you
Right.
can find these biomarkers faster and then get them into some kind of clinical setting faster.
And faster doesn't mean, I hate to say this, but faster doesn't mean sloppier. It just means
No,
you're getting the answers quicker, right?
exactly. exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly. Just because you can get so much done so much more quickly. So I think the pace of discovery is just going to step up quite a
Wow,
bit.
that's great. That's great. And then in terms of, and then certainly, one thing we talk a lot about at CLP is the workforce shortages. Unfortunately, I mean, is this going to help impact it too? An instrument like this, and maybe other instruments that may be coming out from some of your friendly competitors. I mean, would this also, help with workflows and that sort of thing as well?
Well, this particular instrument is much more on what we call the discovery, so high
Okay.
throughput. But you can imagine over time that what you discover on this can be then translated and moved to an instrument that might be smaller footprint, faster,
Okay.
more robust, and easier to use, and then taken into a more, clinical environment. That's
Right.
certainly something that a lot of our customers are talking about doing if they're not already doing it today.
Okay, great. Now, one thing I was thinking about when I was putting together questions for you was how precision medicine could potentially change the relationship between the lab and physicians. Now, do you see that? Are they going to become more of like direct partners? I mean, we always talk about the labs are always down the and it's a joke, but in some cases it's not. It's down in the basement or kind of forgotten about. I mean, does this help also bring the labs a little bit more front and center and being more part of the care team in a way?
Well, it's interesting you say that because there's certainly I was talking to a customer in Munich actually who's involved with doing proteomic analysis of cancer patients in the local hospital that he's
Right,
involved with. So if there's a cancer patient, the sample is sent out to many different labs in the university. And then he's part of the review board that actually looks at all of the data, the genomic data, the RNA data, and the proteomic data to help actually diagnose the cancer patient and then help determine the disease or the treatment
right,
rather. So you're starting to see sort of examples of that. But I think long term, what we would hope is that the physicians just have better information, more precise information,
right.
so that they can provide better treatment, better care for their patients.
Right. Well, and the fact that and this is I think a well-established statistic. 70% of all decisions, care decisions, are based on laboratory results, and the better your results are, the faster your results, the better your results. Uh,
Right.
the better decisions you can make. Again, it's not just let's throw everything at the patients. Hope they get better. Hope
Exactly. You
this.
don't
Yeah.
want that spaghetti on the wall type of
Yeah,
approach,
exactly.
right? Okay,
Exactly. You
back to
said it. I didn't.
your first question, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is why precision medicine is so important.
Yeah.
You want to get something that's very, very personalized for the patient. So
Right.
I think this is what the scientific community is pursuing, I think. And we're really happy that we have technologies that can actually help advance that. It's super exciting.
Yeah. Now you kind of touched a little bit on this, but I want to dig down a little bit more because we're talking about a lot of positive things. Let's talk a little bit about challenges for a second. Are there any challenges facing this kind of diagnostic paradigm? Just in terms of resources, in terms of mindsets, what sort of challenges do you see with shifting to a more precision medicine paradigm?
Well, one thing you can imagine is just data, right? There's
Right.
going to be a lot more data. I mean, we're already dealing with that in our own personal lives, right? If you think about all the photos on your phone and the movies on your
Right.
phone, now you can start to imagine all the data that's being generated, all the data that actually needs to be analyzed, and how can you analyze that faster? So that's certainly something we're talking to a lot of customers about is how do they actually handle all the data and process it?
Right. Right.
I think there's also going to be what is the right what's the right approach from a regulatory standpoint. I think everyone needs to think
Yeah.
about that and what's the right approach that they want to take. So a lot of conversations around that, and we're talking to customers about how we can support them on that journey.
Right.
So a lot of ththings that are it's to your point. There's still some challenges, but that's what's going to make the field really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And it's come a long way in a very short period of time already. So I always do like to look ahead a little bit. I don't want to be, too rose-colored glasses, I guess. But what does the next what does the next 5 or so years look like for this omics precision medicine relationship, at least from your perspective?
Well, a couple of things that we expect will happen over the next 5 years is we think that a lot of the cohorts, biobanks that have already been done, where whole genome sequencing has already been done, we believe a lot of work will be done to now go back to those samples, do whole proteomic analysis, and start to marry the data together for better outcomes. So
Mm,
we definitely see that happening.
okay.
Certainly, there's a handful of organizations out there doing liquid biopsy with proteins that were discovered using proteomics methods. And we think there's going to be more of those, and hopefully better ones, but certainly more of those types of options out on the market.
Yeah.
And then I think, from a technology standpoint, we're certainly going to get faster and faster and much more sensitive. And that's going to be important, right? If you think about cancer, cancer cell, there's not a lot of material in a cancer cell. You need to get, much, much more sensitive to be able to look at a single cell. And we think there's going to be a lot more work done along those lines as well.
Yeah.
So a lot more to come.
Right, right. And it doesn't, this is the thing that always amazes me. And again, I'm just, my medium is words and getting the story out. But what I always find so interesting is that there just doesn't seem to be an endpoint. Every time you think, okay, we've got there, and then
Yeah.
somebody like you comes along and they find some new answer, or some new avenue, and it's just. So this is it looks like this is just a ongoing trail here that we're on then, I guess, with this.
I mean, just think about the millions of genomes that have already been sequenced. The next thing is going to be millions of proteomes being sequenced, if you will. And
Right.
so there's just a great new frontier coming, I think, to the life sciences field. So
Yeah.
it's a really exciting time.
It's very exciting. It's very
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah.
yeah. Next
Yeah.
gen sequencing was super exciting. I think this is now the next frontier.
I
Next gen
think
proteomics.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think it might be, and then putting them together. I think that's
And then putting
really
them
exciting.
together.
You
Exactly.
I mean, this is giant puzzle you put together, and here we are with these very precise treatments, precise diagnostics, which leads to very precise treatments, and it's very very exciting. It's very exciting for everyone. So, unfortunately, with that, we've come to the end of our time. Rosy, thanks again for spending the time with me and our listening audience. I think we covered some really fascinating ground. I think we're talking about the future and all the great things that you and your team are working on. So it's really cool stuff. I was really excited that we were able to have you on the program. I also want to thank you, the laboratory audience, for listening. Look for more episodes of Clinical Lab Chat in the future, and visit us online at clpmag.com and on all of the major social media platforms. And so until next time, be well.
Thank you so much, Chris.